the Countryside Podcasts with Chris Skinner.
The blue skies and sunshine have disappeared for the moment, and what we have is a northerly breeze, quite brisk, and slate-grey skies. But Chris Skinner, no rain, which is something that you'd rather like to see at the moment.
Yes, Matthew. Although we've got close on 100 acres of hay mown, which we cut exactly a week ago when you were here, and we're just waiting for some sunshine to finish it off now. It's quite good quality, actually, and more volume than I thought there would be. But we'd love to get it wrapped up in a bale now. So there's this another one of these farming adages that you always try and bale the sun in with the hay, and it kind of just finishes it off somehow, which I can't explain, unless of course you bale it slightly damp, and then you're compelled to wrap it with plastic, which is what we had to do with our first cut, which is just over on the other side of the field here. And this feels quite relevant for this moment in time, because in about a week's time it's the 1st of September, and that marks the start of the partridge shooting season. You remember the glorious 12th of August, that's red grouse can be shot at that date. And I've had a lifelong interest in grey partridge. There are two species of partridge in the UK. Grey partridge, our only native species, Perdix perdix, and the red-leg partridge, which is an introduced species, which is heavily released and shot with special partridge shoots. So it seems a little bit unfair, because grey partridge has, over the last sort of 30 years or so, has become, first of all, a red data species. That means it had declined by 50% or more in the previous 25 years. And it's still that status, but it's become a red list species now. And it's still declining. And around about the 1980s, there was a biodiversity action plan carried out for most of the sort of at-risk species in the UK, and grey partridge featured very highly up in that. The reason I'm interested in it is strictly a farmland bird. You won't find it in woodland. You do occasionally find it in moorland and other places, but quite often in the northern part of the UK. There's quite a good population up there. But they're still shot, sadly, from the 1st of September, almost exclusively. And they're still declining. I'm a lifetime member of the Partridge Count Scheme, run by Game and Wildlife Conservation Trust, and all we've done is sort of monitor the decline of the species. Last year it declined nationally by 18% more, which is astonishing. This year, so far, the figures show a 10% national reduction in population. And I've been trying to have that species stop being shot at the moment.
So is shooting what's doing for them then?
I wouldn't say that entirely, Matthew. It's a combination of factors. In the 1940s, we had partridge shoots here at Highash Farm. The whole farm's laid out with woodland on some of the best soil in the bottom of the valleys to drive partridges from this high ground here over the top of those trees, and you had what's called high-driven birds, which is the sort of absolute tops of the sport, and they are difficult. They form coveys, which are groups of two parents and all the young as well. And I've been campaigning to stop this sort of shooting at the moment. I've got nothing against shooting them, it's just that they're a red list species and they're still declining, and the remit of the Game and Wildlife Conservation Trust is to halt and reverse the decline, and they've been doing that or trying to do it, I should say, for about a quarter of a century now, and it's time for a review. So I took some decisions a few years back, and to see what I could do single-handedly, which is like throwing a feather in the wind, really, going against the grain, because it sounds as though I'm a deserter, and I'm absolutely not. I love grey partridges. I want there to be enough for everybody to see and enjoy, because they're fabulous, fabulous birds. the most amazing parents. I've been attacked by a male grey partridge protecting its young, and their courtship display is to die for. Two to get together, a male and a female. Suddenly the male chases a female. They're very upright, round, brown birds with a sort of liver-coloured breast, orange cheeks in the breeding season, and then in a millisecond they turn around and the female then chases the male. It's the most amazing courtship display.
Their habits, though, aren't really well suited, are they, to the modern world?
No, this is part of it. Modern agriculture, you need to do special efforts to sort of replicate what was here in the 1940s and 50s. Crops with lots of weeds in, insects for the chicks, it's all important. Brood rearing is crucial. But when I look back at the shooting records here on the 2nd, 3rd or 4th of September each year, I've got all the bag results, and they were shooting 25 brace on the first day, which is 50 birds. This farm must have been peppered with them. So what I did, a single person's effort here, was to write to the local supermarkets. They had grey partridge on the shelf, plucked, dressed, oven ready and ready to sell at £1.50 a bird. First on was Sainsbury's, and I cannot believe the result. I said, should you be selling a red list species, as it had become then, and you know it's not sustainable, and you say on your logo we only sell food from sustainable sources. Within 24 hours, the partridges were withdrawn across the country and they were incinerated. I couldn't believe the result. And so I then wrote to the Game Conservancy and tried a kind of sort of single person's effort again to see if they could change their mind on it, and they haven't done. But we've now got to a point when these declines, 18% last year, 10% this year, is now becoming really significant, although some of the partridge shoots do manage theirs, but on the understanding that they carry out predator control. And predator control, they're actually controlling the things which we love to have here at the farm. It's public access all over the farm, and if anybody sees a fox, a stoat, a weasel, even the badgers, predators for ground nesting birds, although they're a protected species, the rest are called vermin, and predator control carries through across the country into many of the species which shouldn't be controlled, although they do predate ground nesting birds, particularly grey partridge, which nest on the ground. So you can see the story is beginning to unfold, and why I brought you here is last year I carried out an experiment. In front of us is 2 hectares of overwinter wild bird seed mix, all the flowers, all the grains that partridges could want, lots of sunflowers now coming out, and every Saturday morning through the shooting season I brought bird scarer here, so I didn't need to use a gun, and I let off 3 bangers, one at 9 o'clock, one at 9:30 and one at 10 o'clock, so it's over the space of an hour. And I did that regularly without fail. It's a really unusual thing to do, right where we're standing, and then I recorded the birds that came out of the crop. But I had a control area on the south side of High Ash Farm of 80 acres of exactly the same crop, sown on exactly the same day from the same pile. Nearly 10 tonnes of grains went in on this overwinter wild bird seed mix. And why it was important is these crops can be shot through, although it's kind of public money for public goods because it's sponsored under mid-tier. You can sow areas like this on your farm.
So that's government money?
Yes, there's an anomaly, because when I first went into stewardship, I spoke to my farm advisor and I said, this overwinter wild bird seed mix, can you actually shoot through it? Because there's nothing to say that you can't. And the lady, my advisor, looked at me and said, we hope that you don't do that. We trust you not to do it, is the exact words. And yet that anomaly is still there, and yet we're trying to halt and reverse the decline, and that's one of the small things that you can do, because my monitoring says the bird population on this 2 hectares went down 80% compared to the south half of Highest Farm, where I did the same monitoring without the banging going off for 1 hour once a week. So it does have quite a profound effect.
So you
and
were
I was replicating
a shoot,
exactly
which
without shooting.
It seems from the evidence has proven
Yes.
that there's a vast quelling of bird populations on the site of a regular shoot.
That's right, yes, and that's exactly what I found, but I'd now like a research body to prove that scientifically. A body that stands back from all of this, perhaps the BTO, the British Trust for Ornithology. The RSPB is a bit handicapped because it's in its original charter. It's not allowed to comment on game birds adversely, so it's left the partridge vulnerable, if you like, and it's under the remit of basically a shooting organisation under the BAP species sort of protection zone for them, and it's a little bit concerning, although a lot of work is done. But I think my long and the short of this argument is, if you stop shooting them, stop predator control, grey partridge, our native species, would actually hold its own and recover. As simple as that.
And there'd be a marvellous sight, and an addition really that we've grown used to not seeing.
Yes, here, my graph, I don't know if I brought the graph with me, I didn't. It's a completely flat line of no grey partridge here, and yet about 5 years ago I had a pair arrive and they nested, a male and female. They brought off 14 chicks, got them on the video. Absolutely perfect, drinking from a pond on a very, very hot day. By the 4th of September, game birds are very mobile. You can only own them while they're on your own property, and if they move to somewhere else, they then become somebody else's property.
In other words, they don't stick around.
No, they're very mobile, and they can fly across 2 or 3 fields if they get frightened. And a neighbouring farmer might not realise that A, they're a red list species, B, that the neighbouring farmer's trying to protect and rebuild them, and they were all shot. Parents and young, the whole lot. The young were about 12, 14 weeks old, just feathered up nicely. The whole lot were shot legally.
It'd be great to see a grey partridge today, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That call that they make haunts me to this day. There you are.
Well,
none have answered.
Instead of Percy Edwards, we might well hear the real thing one day.
Yes, I hope so. Fingers crossed.
On the way to our next recording site, and quite a rare sight these days to see swallows on a wire.
Matthew, we're a good 3/4 of a mile away from the farm itself, and this is absolutely typical. We've got parent swallows out on this horse pasture. It's quite a large field, fence going across the edge of the field here. And that's one of the parents, long-tailed streamers. Oh, and another family, look further down, another dozen swallows. So a group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 next to us, then a group of 3, and then so many further on I can't count them. They're all facing northwards into this cool wind, wondering what the UK is going to throw at them next in terms of weather.
Dreaming of South Africa.
Yes, and that's what's going to happen. They'll all be on their way down. And here's the parents just flying past, and the young watching them intently. The parents are skimming the pasture, and one's landed, another one's just come in, is going to perhaps feed the young, and teaching them how to hunt, how to feed, and what to look out for. But those youngsters will be heading down to South Africa.
There's one flying low over the pasture here, and
yes,
just now onto the barbed wire.
A cool 5,000 miles before long, and they go down by themselves.
Oh, lots more.
Look, all parents coming in to feed their offspring. So the offspring have been taken away from the farm, and they're all landing on the fence in front of us. Look down there. You almost can't jam-pack another one in.
I love that sight. It's the sight of the end of summer, early autumn, swallows on maybe a telephone cable, in this case on a fence.
Yes, that happens, and my father used to say they're fattening themselves up, and I said, well, how are they doing that? He said, because you ever find a dead swallow? He said, that's covered in lice. And he said, that's what they feed on when they migrate down their own captive food. And I did used to smile, because I don't think there's much truth in that one. Although swallows do have a particular form of feather lice, always, and so do house martins and swifts. But that's absolutely stunning.
And these will be your swallows from the farm?
Yeah, almost certainly. Look at that. The third post furthest away from us is absolutely, the wire between the post is covered in swallows. What have you got there? 20 almost joined together. What a wonderful sight. Look, they're letting us drive right past these ones. All youngsters.
Oh, we've got that lovely sort of red colour.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's not developed properly, it's almost orange. Wow, we're only, look, these are still got a bit of fluff on them there. They're very youngsters, and this is probably the second brood out. A parent has just come in, very adept flying, and landed on the strand beneath all the youngsters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 on that strand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the next. Wow, look at that. That's whoa, goodness. Look at there. Just take to the air, just a few of them. Some have stayed there as we drive past to our next little destination. What a lovely sight.
Just kicking through some of the early drop of leaves, and oh dear, Chris, you've not just got leaves dropping in this woodland here.
Matthew, last weekend, it was late Friday night, there was an enormous crash in this part of the woodland. We're in Fox's Grove, we're right on the southern edge of it, and it's a portion of arable field that was just left for some reason in the early 1940s, and lots of self-seeded ash, some oak sort of put themselves here, and they've grown up into quite large and mature trees. And as it's high ash farm, obviously I've got this sort of very deep sort of love of ash trees, and learnt a lot about them. And I was devastated 10 years or more ago now, when ash dieback, or chalara as it's properly called, arrived in the UK and started to kill all the young ash saplings that had been planted under stewardship. And I was victim of that as well. We put in over 2,500 ash saplings all over the farm, mixed with other British native trees. And I had a sort of feeling that the mature ash would somehow sort of survive the onslaught of ash dieback, which is a fungal disease, usually attacks the new growth on trees, stains all the way down a tree with a kind of blackish brownish dye. It looks as though the tree has been stained with some invisible ink that becomes visible when you cut through the trunk. And what's happened is that fungus has become quite active in the trees, killed the upper canopy. The tree then starts to put out new growth, and because it's new, young and vulnerable, it's even more suitable for the fungi to attack, and that's why it's called ash dieback. It doesn't necessarily kill mature ash trees in 1 year. It kills them over a succession of years, and then the roots start to rot, because ash doesn't last long in the soil itself. And so the roots are always quite shallow. You can see there's a walkway through this area of woodland here, and you can see in places near the trees the soil's raised up, and that's where the roots have expanded under the soil. It happens under road surfaces as well, all over the farm, on the small roads that go through high ash. The roots expand, but they're now affected as well. And this particular tree just snapped off, and there were people walking on the farm, but I do something called due diligence. I go through the areas of woodland close to the walks, and I have a little hammer like this here, and I tap the trees just to make sure that that one to me sounded okay. But what's happened is snapped off about 10 feet up, and it's revealed some rot in the middle of the tree, which all the way round the outside of the tree, it's good hardwood, you can see here. nice and hard. But in the centre, which I didn't detect, it's got a sort of fungus rot. Sort of because the tree was under stress a few years ago, it allowed the fungus to come in, and also we've had really hot, dry weather for a year or two in the middle of the summer. Ash, being shallow rooted, grows all over the UK. It's one of our British native trees, and it's become quite vulnerable. Now, this has caused me a worry because it went right through this area of woodland. It's over 100 feet tall, although I can almost get my arms right round it. It's only about 18, 24-inch diameter, and it went out onto one of the permissive walks. Fortunately, there was nobody actually walking past, but several people heard it.
It was during the day this happened?
Yes, it was sort of about 6 o'clock in the evening last Friday, and so I came down Saturday morning, and it took me the whole day to cut through the top. I've left the trunk where it is. It's not really any use for timber, obviously, you can see, although it's a lovely tree, and funny enough, there's no woodpecker holes in this one, whereas many of these ash have woodpecker holes, or jackdaws can nest in them. But it starts to sort of raise questions about the safety of having permissive walking on the farm and the vulnerability. It was only a slight northerly breeze, and it came through from a bit of an unusual direction last week. It wasn't anything like a gale. That northerly wind has been with us all week, and it was just enough to find the weakness in this tree and snap it off, although it passed my due diligence test.
Look at Rat climbing the tree.
Yes,
now it's lying horizontal.
Yes, he's about 4 or 5 feet up off the ground, and he's a bit of a tree climber in another world. I think he should have been a squirrel in a previous life, but he loves exploring new things, and so it's just a bit sad, really. And this is now happening all over high ash in areas of the woodland where it doesn't matter at all. The trees can actually lay there and go back into the woodland floor and form new soil eventually. It takes years for them to rot away.
Now, quite a few people walk through here,
Yes.
so it must keep you up at night worrying about this.
I worry about safety on the farm all the time, but there's a limit to what you can do, and there's always a risk, whether you drive a car, go in an aeroplane, or whether you're just walking. You expect it to be safe, and if you're on private property, which this is, then there's always a risk. See, somebody's actually running past it this second, look, just through the woodland there.
And it's a 1 in a million, isn't it?
It
But
is.
Of course, these cases do happen.
Yes, they do, and it's always a tragedy, particularly if somebody gets even injured. You only need a small piece of wood.
Swallows flying into one of the large barns at High Ash Farm, feeding their young. This is one of the big conservation success stories I know you're very proud of.
Just brings a huge delight. 4 youngsters just waiting for mum and dad.
The podcast aims to bring you sights and sounds like this every week, and we're very thankful of your support. So any donations or subscriptions are very welcome indeed.
All we need is a little bit of extra help. It just keeps it going from week to week.
Monthly or one-off subscriptions, whatever the size, and the website highashfarm.com/podcast.
6 youngsters right above our head, all with their gates wide open. I mean, the trees are so thick here, they're almost, you can stand between them and touch the next trunk, look there. And Rat's decided to try and help with the demolition of this trunk by biting it up.
What are you doing? He's trying to...
Yes.
Giant toothpick.
Yes, he's on.
Oh, now he's on a seesaw.
He's gone on a piece of wood and overbalanced it. Anyway, so the trees are very dense here, and that's what's helped put them under stress, because there's just no moisture in the base of a valley. The soil is really, really fertile here, and that's why they've all gone up close together. Years ago it would have been a valuable timber, but now they're all affected with ash dieback. It's stained with this brown sort of stain that the fungus spores create as they go down into the roots and actually rot the roots in the ground as well, because the soil is moist down there in the root zone. And so it's ideal habitat for the fungi to have a field day. But there we are. It's sad, and it shows you that nature has this huge power, whether it's the power of minute things that we can't see, like fungal spores going through the air, or you take the other extreme, the big gales we had, 1987, we had October the 17th, it scarred on my heart 1,500 trees down at the farm, and it took me 3 years of hard work clearing it all up to get it back to what it was. And those scars have all gone. It's just left one on my soul here somewhere with all that chainsawing and hiring in massive diggers. The trees didn't just come over, you hadn't got the top to do with. It brought huge plates of soil up because, like at the moment, the trees are all in leaf, and it just shows you how careful you have to be out in the countryside. Just be vigilant the whole time, that when we're getting more and more wind events I should say, it can cause trees like this that you think are completely sound. Even if they drop a limb from high up in the canopy, something just 3 or 4 inches thick coming from 70 feet up is enough to cause a fatality or a serious injury. So it's really difficult, because I want to encourage people to come and enjoy the countryside. It belongs to everybody after all. Nature is everybody's. It's part of our living heritage, I call it. You don't have to go into a museum to see it. It's there. It's our environment, and it's what's catching the news all the time at the moment with global warming, and it's an area that I'm intensely interested in, as you can tell. After all, it's my life now, and I want people to carry on coming and enjoying it, but it's always worrying when there's a risk element, like this lovely sound tree that I thought, big mistake, it broke off.
Snapped off like someone snapping a pencil 10 feet up.
Yes, it's some pencil, isn't it? It's gone right through, 80 feet through to the edge of the wood, and another 25 feet beyond that, which took Saturday morning and most of Saturday afternoon to clear up, and you wouldn't know it had happened. I've just left the trunk here to remember this lovely ash tree.
Right up here on the ridge of a hill on High Ash Farm. We can see the farm in the not too far off distance. And earlier in the summer, when we were really in the grips of droughts, this was just virtually bare earth, and you were worried about when you were going to be able to plant anything on this field. But I know this was always your aim. Tell us what we've got now, Chris.
Right, this is a 30-acre field of overwinter wild bird seed mix, and this year I've used just short of 10 tonnes of cereal seed, and it's mixed with fodder radish, mustard, linseed, lots of millet in here as well. There's a huge millet spray just here, absolutely covered in seeds. And not long after I'd sowed it, I kept cultivating the field to make what we called a sterile seedbed. It kept germinating, and there were lots of greenery coming up, and then I'd put the cultivator through again and again and again till I was kind of blue in the face. And eventually there was good rain in the forecast, and broadcast all the seed on, together with just short of 1/2 tonne of sunflower seed. And I thought, well, fingers crossed, they should come into flower in time for the school summer holidays. And we're right near the end of those holidays, and out come the sunflowers. And just on this field, there are well over 100,000 sunflowers. You can see them in the distance. They're all facing away from us. They're facing more or less due east.
But if we look back here,
yes,
you can see them.
Yes. Turn around and look the other way.
Lovely yellow colours.
And so what I've done, I've mown a walk through the sunflowers here for anybody who's suffering from school holiday'itis, when you have the children around your neck all day and you don't quite know what to do, so they can expel some energy running around this. It's a circle of about 400 or 500 yards long, and you surround just a small area of the sunflowers. And it's just wonderful, but it's all about pollen and nectar, and then the seed production later on. If we just walk in a little bit, there's one sunflower just coming into flower here, and 3 almost under the space of my hand here, loads. So it's going to be quite a display in about a week's time. These are some of the first ones. So you've got the little petals all the way round, which really do nothing for conservation, but that attracts the bees in. Then you've got the beginning of the pollen coming off the male portion around the edges, and each one of those would, if it's pollinated, carries a little bit of yellow pollen just on the top. There it is on my fingertip. Look, yes. Can you see little pollen grains? Bees will collect the pollen, and also some down in the ovaries there. Those will have nectar in, and the bee will put its tongue down in it, honeybee or lots of bumblebees. It's cool this morning, so it's a bit quiet on the insect front. And they, once they're pollinated, then the next lot of flowers, little with the pollen on, move inwards over the face of the sunflower, and all of that lovely geometrical pattern on the top of the sunflower, they're all seeds waiting to be pollinated, and then they'll grow over late September into October and form a really delicious meal for some of those finch flocks that we've been trying to catch up with over recent weeks. Greenfinches and goldfinches will eat them on the seed head. I love to see the birds over the winter months perched on top of the seed head, reaching round, because as the sunflower ripens, the heads will face downwards like that. Helps with weather protection as well, if you get those heavy rains. And then it's a really high oil content seed, which is fantastic. But I wouldn't like to guesstimate the population. It looks about as thick as a crop of sugar beet, so that would be sort of getting on for 20,000 plants an acre times 30. So you can see I've got quite a population. I'm smiling now. Look,
it's wonderful. And you've got all these sunflowers all facing actually where you live over there.
Yes, it will be quite a sight, but you're very welcome to find this. It's almost in the middle of High Ash Farm. There's 2 or 3 car parks. The walks are all free, so you can walk round. You can let the children off the lead. Dogs on the lead, mind you, excluding Rat beside me. And then there's lots of strange flowers in here. There's one here called Phacelia, which is just coming out into flower. And you can see the idea of when, over recent weeks, we've visited the pollen and nectar fields, and as their flowering period has come to an end, then I've sort of carried it on here with the overwinter wild bird seed mix by delaying the planting a little bit. Mind you, I was forced to do that because of the dry weather. And all the cereal here, I mean, farmers would sort of give their right arm to have a crop like this. No fertiliser on this crop whatsoever, and it's produced lots and lots of grain which will stay on these ears. This is this particular one's barley, and I can rub the grain out, and there it is. And you can see the grain, and a lot of farmers would shrug their shoulders at this, and bless boy, that's dross, they'd say, which means it's rubbish. But that's the right size grain for a lot of our finch species. They can't cope really, seed-eating birds, with large modern grains. So what I do is I double the seed rate, and that causes sort of dross, if you like, to grow. Because
it overcrowds itself.
It overcrowds itself, and so you get a very high yield of seed. And I've learned how to do this off my own back over the years, and it's my own special mixture which many people have copied and grown. Mustard in flower down there. This is fodder radish. Oh, borage there, a brilliant blue, excellent for bees. And the Phacelia there.
And acres of teasel as well.
Teasels, there's a little teasel walk. So this side you actually walk through the teasel walk, but don't get confused, because on the east side of High Ash Farm is a teasel maze, which you very kindly opened, and we're getting between 400 and 500 walkers a week going through that. I say, come to High Ash Farm and get lost, you know, in the politest possible way. But it's all part of sharing nature and the countryside with the general public, and it's quite an enjoyable thing to do. So there we are. Look at that millet. Now that's enough to...
Look at that.
This is red millet, and this is white millet. You can see the flower on that is much more open, but each one's produced sort of a tablespoonful of seed already. So it's an amazing facility, so it won't be disturbed other than this bit where people can walk through at the moment. And so it's left to wildlife, and I think if we walk through this field for just a couple of minutes. We'd put up perhaps half a dozen deer, lots of game birds in here feeding away, and they love it. No insecticide used, obviously, on here, so it's what you call manna from heaven.
It's a feast for the birds. And I think we've got a little feast for the eyes in terms of our emails this week.
Yes.
So we better go and have a look at them.
We'll head back to the truck and try and get out of the wind, otherwise the questions will be all over the field.
Tim Dickinson is a great supporter of this podcast. And Tim, thank you very much for doing that. And you've sent us a note. Tim lives in Lancashire. We built a barn owl box in 2020. This year represents the 5th successive year of 4 owlets being brought into the area. By the way, I also recently bought 45 square metres of wild flowers, which roll out like lawn grass, an instant selection of native flower coverage, and has attracted immediately many pollinators and ladybirds. It was an area of rough banking posts, some building work, and looks amazing now.
Yeah, that's a quick result. That's an amazing thing to do. Mainly, I should think it's annual mix, but you could have a few perennials in there. I don't know what varieties of species of plants you've got, but it's always, even with a small area like that, such a rewarding thing to do, to get pollinators, bees and butterflies into an area which was probably derelict and of no use to wildlife just before that. So well done indeed, and thank you for the email.
This one's from Moira and Bill. Hi Chris, we had an unusual experience with a male chaffinch in the spring. We think he was one of the pair nesting in a willow opposite our bedroom window. Every single day during May, the male chaffinch tapped persistently on our bedroom window, then jumped up and down several times, flapping his wings, then showed off his glamorous plumage on one side, then the other. It was as if he wanted to get our attention. He was showing off. Have you ever come across this?
Yes, chaffinches get addicted to car mirrors on the wing and can perch on top. It's happened at the farmyard here several times, and what's happened is they've flown past and seen a brief reflection of themselves, and they assume it's another male and in their own territory, and obviously there'll be a female nesting nearby. So what it's doing is just trying to show another male chaffinch, which is its own reflection, who's boss around here, and is trying to sort of see it off by displaying, showing all its prowess of colours, and sometimes it results in aggressive behaviour as well, of them continually tapping the window. So what you need to do is to put something non-reflective behind the glass. They spend hours doing that instead of helping to feed the female who's on the nest. Very vain.
One of the most controversial topics we talk about on the podcast, and I know it's discussed elsewhere, is Himalayan balsam. For many, an invasive nuisance species, and many hours in recent times have been expended trying to rip the stuff out, particularly next to rivers. Kerry says, I've looked until I'm blue in the face for the research that you've mentioned showing that Himalayan balsam was found in coal seams deep underground here in the UK. If you've got the time, please, could you direct me to the research? It sounds like Kerry wants to support your view, but she hasn't seen the research.
Yes, OK, I will do my very best to find the references that I use. I obviously get quotes and information from lots of other sources, although having said that, Himalayan balsam is one of the latter plants to come into flower after the Carboniferous era, and coal seams were laid down in the Carboniferous era about 300 million years ago, and flowering plants emerged after that. Having said that, there's a species of balsam which barely flowers, growing right next to where we're sitting in this area of wood. It's called small balsam, still same member of the family of impatiens, which is also your busy Lizzie family, and that's also another species that's been introduced quite a while ago into the UK, but it isn't so invasive. But I'll do my best, and if I can find the exact source that I found to make that quote about balsam being found in coal seams in Yorkshire, I will send the information through to you gladly.
Oh, now rats.
Rats needing some
saying
attention here.
something.
Come on, up. Oh, good.
It's good because Rat has probably seen that there's a picture of a black Labrador in this next email.
That's what the fuss was about, yes.
Emma. Hello, Emma Myhill. Our ditches and old ponds are bone dry this summer after the consistent lack of rain, as pictured here with Max the dog, who was hoping for a swim, and he does look, he doesn't look too disappointed, does he? There looks to be a lot of, is it bistort?
Yep.
Yellow flag and low-growing plants, I don't know. Would you recommend thinning out some of these plants?
Possibly, but usually it will get filled up with water again naturally if it's a low area. You've got to be quite cautious if you do want to clear somewhere. Just do a small area to start with. I've identified the plant for you. It's an easy one for me. It's a member of the potentilla family, which you can grow the sort of garden varieties, and this particular one is Potentilla ansarea, and it's also called silverweed. It grows all over High Ash Farm, some in wet areas, some in very, very dry areas, and you can identify, if you get one of the leaves and just look on the underside, it's almost shiny silver on the underside of the leaves. So there we are, lovely photograph and easy to identify. Thank you.
Jane Nicholson says, Kai and myself have been for several visits on the farm this summer and took some lovely photographs, one of which Kai has done a painting of, and he asked me to send a photo of it to you. It's the wildflower meadow, so we hope you like it. One of our visits was quite late and almost dark. We headed down from where the coffee van parks towards Fox's Grove. Kai was a little scared and worried as we came across a dead rabbit, and he wondered what might have killed it. He also panicked about the fallen tree across the path. That might be the one we've just seen. I think he thought we were stuck there for the night. Obviously not. There's the painting. Oh, look at that. That's wonderful,
and
isn't it?
That's really, really, really good. It's one of the High Ash Farm wildflower fields there, yellow in the background and the wildflowers in the foreground. Really, really well done. It's a young budding artist in the making there.
Yes, so thank you for that. And what about the rabbit?
The rabbit
just
was
natural causes.
Not necessarily. If there was no signs of blood or a struggle, it could be the new kid on the block, rabbit hemorrhagic disorder, and it can kill rabbits within moments. They become infected, and then they actually hemorrhage on the inside after a period of infection, and it's deadly. It's sort of even more deadly than the disease first discovered in the 1950s, which was myxomatosis, and it's become quite prevalent in the UK now, and it's spreading right across the country. And rabbits often don't die down in their burrows, they're actually out of the burrow, unless of course it's an invisible nip on the back of the neck caused by one of the farm stoats here, which don't get controlled, and always fantastic to see.
We get an awful lot of emails from people who live within a few miles because they enjoy coming walking here. But we also have people further afield, and it's lovely to hear from you. But I think our most far distant correspondent over many years is Tamsin, who lives in Tasmania.
I know, southern Australia, the little island down there off the coast, absolutely amazing. And she sent us, she listened to our podcast from a week or so ago, and about the recipe that was from my granny, Rose Skinner, and she sent the recipe through, all printed out beautifully as a kind of card, and I'll get Daniel to put that on High Ash Farm Facebook page, and so that everybody can enjoy the recipe. It's written out perfectly. She's called the amount that you drink a posset, and I called it on the podcast a dosset, but I looked in the dictionary and I could only find posset, which is a drink of milk with sugar in it, and so which you have in a small amount.
It's what I've suspected for a while. You're starting to make up some of these words.
I do, absolutely.
A little dosset, but almost, you can see what it means,
yes.
A dosset. It'll just have a little dosset.
Skinner is terrible. It's a Skinnerism.
It's a new language. Any more questions? And we look at the emails inboxes each week, and please do keep sending them. Chris@highashfarm.com. Or if you want to help contribute to keep the podcast going and cover some of the expenses, donations are very welcome. You can find out how to do that on the High Ash Farm website, highashfarm.com/podcast. And thank you for all the kindness.
Yep, thank you, Matthew, for turning up each week. And don't forget, the walking's free at the farm here. Sunflower Walk is up and running at the moment. Teasel Maze, and on your way here, there's a lovely cornflower, wildflower field in full flower on a southern slope. We just need some more warm weather to see some of those clouded yellow butterflies that have joined us, not from next door, but from the southern Mediterranean.